Beneath ordinary exteriors lay unimaginable darkness. These men led double lives, deceiving everyone around them while carrying out some of history's most horrifying crimes. Get ready to unveil the chilling truths hidden beneath their facades. Number 1. In the early 1980s, peculiar events began occurring in one of the most quietest cities in Alaska. Women were disappearing suddenly, leaving no evidence behind. The police were perplexed. Several young women had vanished within a short period, and no one could determine where they had gone. Some suspected abductions, while others theorized it was a string of unfortunate incidents. However, there was something hidden in the city that its residents couldn't perceive. But who or what was causing these disappearances? One of Anchorage's residents was Robert Hansen, a local bakery owner. He was regarded as a respectable man, a good father, and a dependable neighbor. No one would have suspected that this quiet baker might be linked to the strange events unfolding in the city. To the community, Hansen was a diligent businessman who enjoyed hunting and fishing. But his passion for hunting was far more darker than anyone could have imagined. How could a man with such a reputation hide such a terrifying secret? In the summer of 1983, everything changed. A young woman named Cindy Paulson, shaken and distraught, escaped from a car and sought help from the authorities. Her story sounded like something out of a nightmare. She claimed that a man had kidnapped her, attempted to fly her to the remote Alaskan wilderness, and intended to harm her. Against all odds, she managed to escape. Cindy provided a detailed description of her abductor and his residence. But could it truly be the same well-regarded baker? Detective Glenn Floth, already familiar with the case of the missing women, decided to investigate Cindy's story. He noticed uncanny similarities between her story and other unresolved cases. This became the starting point for a more in-depth investigation. Analyzing the disappearances and compiling evidence, the investigators began to connect the dots to Hansen. They questioned witnesses, tracked his hunting excursions, and inspected the locations Cindy had identified. But could they collect enough proof to bring him down? When the police arrested Hansen, they were still not entirely convinced of his guilt. However, searches of his residence and private plane yielded shocking revelations. Personal items belonging to the missing women were uncovered, along with a map pinpointing burial sites scattered across the wilderness. These findings became undeniable proof of his crimes. Robert Hansen admitted to numerous offenses and was ultimately sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Alaska finally breathed a sigh of relief. The predator had been stopped. But one haunting question remained. How long had he hidden undetected among them? Number 2. In the early 1970s, young women in the western United States started vanishing without explanation. One by one, they disappeared from college campuses, parking lots, and quiet streets. Some were last seen accepting help from a good-looking stranger with a broken arm, while others vanished in broad daylight, leaving behind only fear and confusion. As the number of disappearances increased, so did the panic. Nobody could have guessed that one of the most charismatic men in America was the predator behind these horrifying acts. Who could be responsible for the disappearance of these young women? Ted Bundy was not what anyone envisioned when they thought of a criminal. Attractive, articulate, and magnetic, he was studying law and even worked on political campaigns. Friends and colleagues described him as sociable, intelligent, and ambitious. Nobody would have suspected that behind this flawless image was a monster hiding in plain sight. Bundy used his good looks and charm to trick unsuspecting women into his clutches, often pretending to be hurt or asking for assistance. His winning smile made people trust him almost instantly. But once he had them alone, the illusion of the gentleman vanished, revealing the nightmare beneath. How could someone so seemingly ideal conceal such a sinister and twisted side? In 1974, Bundy's reign of terror took a dramatic turn when one young woman, Carol Durange, managed to get away. Bundy had pretended to be a police officer and coaxed her into his car, but Carol fought back, managing to flee and survive. She became one of the key witnesses who would later help identify him. Meanwhile, Bundy's crimes continued across several states. As he moved from Utah to Colorado, Washington, and Florida, more women fell victim to his charm. His ability to evade capture made him appear unstoppable. But the case was far from over. Could Carol's courageous escape be the key to ending Bundy's deadly spree? Ted Bundy's luck finally ran out in 1975 when he was stopped by police for a routine traffic violation. Inside his car, officers discovered tools clearly meant for kidnapping and murder. While Bundy initially denied all charges, the growing evidence soon revealed the truth. He was charged with abducting Carol Durant and, later, murder. However, Bundy's cleverness didn't end there. In a shocking twist, he escaped custody not once, but twice. The first time, he jumped from a courthouse window during a pre-trial hearing in Colorado. The second time, he broke out of his jail cell in 1977, committing more murders in Florida before being recaptured. Could this man ever truly be stopped, or would he continue to outwit the law? As Bundy awaited trial, the horrifying scope of his crimes started to emerge. He eventually admitted to killing over 30 women, though the real number is believed to be much higher. His methods were cruel. He lured women in, attacked them, and sometimes returned to the crime scenes to desecrate the bodies further. Bundy's calm attitude and chilling confessions stunned the nation. In 1979, the world watched as Bundy's trial became one of the most famous in history. His charm and legal knowledge, which he used to defend himself in court, drew widespread media attention, and Bundy appeared to enjoy the spotlight. But despite his efforts to sway the jury, he was convicted of murder and sentenced to death. How had Bundy remained undetected for so long, and how many more victims would there have been without his eventual capture? Ted Bundy's execution came in 1989, after years of appeals. Crowds gathered outside the prison, cheering as the infamous murderer was finally executed in the electric chair. His death marked the conclusion of one of America's most terrifying chapters. Yet, the haunting question remained. How many more men like Ted Bundy could be living unnoticed, hiding behind the mask of charm and normalcy? How does someone like Bundy become so dangerously deceptive? Number 3. In the early 1980s, fear gripped Seattle and its surrounding areas. Along the Green River, the bodies of young women were discovered one by one, some floating in its murky waters. Most of the victims were runaways or sex workers, complicating the investigation. The killer left few traces, frustrating authorities at every turn. As the body count rose, so did the terror in the community. Who was targeting these vulnerable women, and why did the police seem powerless to stop them? Gary Ridgway seemed like an ordinary man. A truck painter by trade, he was married, attended church regularly, and blended seamlessly into his community. Friends and neighbors described him as quiet and unremarkable. Yet, beneath this facade lurked a predator with an insatiable urge to kill. Ridgway's hunting grounds were the highways near the Green River. He preyed on vulnerable women, luring them with offers of help before strangling them in secluded locations. He then discarded their bodies like they were nothing. How could someone so seemingly normal hide such a monstrous secret for so long? Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, investigators worked tirelessly to catch the killer. Public pressure intensified as the number of victims climbed, but the Green River killer seemed to vanish without leaving evidence behind. Several suspects were interrogated and even arrested, but none matched the killer's profile. Ridgway himself was briefly questioned, but his calm and unremarkable demeanor, coupled with a lack of evidence, led to his release. Meanwhile, the killings continued, fueling his confidence that he would never be caught. Could justice ever catch up with this elusive predator, or had he outsmarted the law forever? For nearly 2 decades, the Green River case haunted investigators. It wasn't until the early 2000s, with advancements in DNA technology, that a major breakthrough came. Samples collected from Ridgway during a prior investigation were reanalyzed and matched to multiple victims. In 2001, Ridgway was arrested. The man who had lived a seemingly normal life was unmasked as one of the most prolific serial killers in U.S. history. How had a man hiding in plain sight evaded justice for so long? During his trial, Ridgway shocked the nation by confessing to 48 murders, though he hinted the true number might be closer to 80. His method was calculated and cold. He gained his victims' trust, killed them, and discarded their bodies in remote locations. To Ridgway, these women were easy prey. In exchange for avoiding the death penalty, Ridgway cooperated with investigators, even helping locate more remains. He showed no remorse, chillingly recounting his crimes with unsettling detachment. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. How had he managed to evade capture for so many years, and what does his case reveal about the evil that can hide behind an ordinary face?
To the charge of aggravated murder in the first degree, as charged in count 1.
Guilty.
Today, Gary Ridgway remains in prison, serving multiple life sentences for his unspeakable crimes. For the families of his victims, his capture brought some closure, but their pain endures. The Green River Killer's story is a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the most unassuming individuals. How many more predators like Ridgway walk among us, hidden behind masks of normalcy? Ridgway, a man who appeared to be just another face in the crowd, had, in fact, been one of the deadliest serial killers the world had ever known. How many more like him walk among us, hidden behind the veil of normalcy?
I don't wish for him to die. I wish for him to have a long, suffering, cruel death.